Oh my god. Back in 2008, DICE set out to create a game that would help enhance their variety of experiences they had to offer. Battlefield, till this day, is arguably their greatest success and what they are deservedly known for, but during the early doors there was more opportunity to lay the groundwork and try new ideas. In an industry dominated by money and the constant need to recycle content, the idea of starting a purely movement and parkour focused game will be non-existent nowadays. Not that players don't enjoy movement mechanics, in fact it's the complete opposite. Mirror's Edge, however, is just that. A first-person action adventure with movement and art style at the forefront of its identity, as opposed to some more recent movement-oriented titles. Titanfall 2 leans heavily into movement with its pilot gameplay, but it's still at core a shooter with a large focus on Titans and its story. Black Ops 3, another take on Call of Duty's exo movement, but still retaining the franchise identity of a 3-lane creator class FPS and a zombies mode without said exosuits included. And then there's Dying Light, a heavily parkour based game but with a heavy lean towards combat and horror. Back to my point, all of those titles I mentioned have movement, but with other huge focuses outside such as story and combat. This is where Mirror's Edge truly stands out. Movement is the main concept and identity, and it's arguably better than any other franchise at just doing that. Today I'll be looking at both Mirror's Edge and the 2016 soft reboot Catalyst, somewhat comparing the two where necessary, but mostly praising what both games do well and what areas in design they kind of falter in. Let's start with the obvious. Mirror's Edge and Catalyst don't differ too much from one another outside of a few movement additions in the reboot, which makes my job easier when speaking on the fundamentals, which is where I wish to start. What's fascinating about the core set of movements is actually the simplicity. The basic mechanics include jumping, sliding, rolling, wall running, climbing, swinging and 180-degree turns. There are no flips or tricks that you would probably think of when it comes to parkour, but there's absolutely zero demand for any. On their own, these inputs are not that special, especially if the routes you take are void of obstacles. But where these movesets shine is in how they can be chained together. With how both games present their environments, there is no shortage of unique sequences you can achieve involving satisfying chain after chain of different moves. And that's why it works. It's satisfying. Running up a wall into a 180 to grab a surface behind you is such a simple combo of movements, but the timing and animations are what make it beyond addictive. Wall running on a surface to turn and leap off onto another is rewarding because it's a simple stylistic choice for the player. The non-linear paths and options outside of the highlighted red obstacles allows you to try more difficult and stylish forms of progression. And speaking of progression, Catalyst not only introduced an upgrade system to bolster your combat and movement, but it also opens the player up to new movements not available in the previous game, such as integrating a grappling hook to swing and pull yourself across drops, or the much needed double wall run in which you can chain wall runs on opposing surfaces. Once again, these are simple concepts seen in plenty of titles, but the satisfying execution is what makes them special. Being that Catalyst offers time trials of certain routes through its open world, these new movement techs are sometimes required to make up needed time on said trials. Of course, the first game also has the ability to run speedruns and time trials of each individual chapter, but you aren't unlocking different movesets throughout. So this is what I'm getting at. In Catalyst, attempting a certain run too soon without unlocking the double wall run, for example, can enable you to achieve anything higher than a 1 star on a race. So once you return to the same race later with these new skills, it adds to the satisfaction of conquering the objective. Additionally, part of the charm Mirror's Edge brings is how it encourages the player to search for their own routes. Sure, you can use runner vision, but finding your own way to finish the line is far more enjoyable. The game is a speedrunner's wet dream, and I don't mean that just because it's movement based. Both games have either time trials or a speedrun mode, with the original having a very heavy focus on this aspect once you complete the campaign. However, me personally, I much just prefer finding my own means of traversal to a certain point. For instance, in the first game, my personal favourite level to replay involves an almost puzzle-like warehouse, and just attempting a smooth run to the top floor with no mistakes took over an hour of my time, but man was it worth it. That's how you make movement work as a pivotal mechanic. Grant the player a linear route to start, so they can follow the route and learn some of the terrain on their own first and get to grips with their surroundings, then let them choose for themselves with fun and challenging obstacles to be discovered around the same area. And for those who are more competitive, throw in the time trials. Another instance of the original game shining is the ease of access to each chapter, allowing you to speedrun and practice every single mission in preparation for when you want to try speedrunning the entire game by yourself. But of course, it's not just the movement mechanics that help the parkour work so well, it's also the level design, which leads us perfectly into this second core element of Mirror's Edge. When DICE was in the development process of Mirror's Edge, they initially had a different idea for the visuals, a dirty and gritty city reminiscent of most modern games at the time. But after cooking up a light bake with no textures, the lighting looked so impressive that they ended up going with it. And so I want to speak on the original first, as both games, despite being gorgeous, actually look and feel surprisingly different when it comes to the level design and architecture. Mirror's Edge presents a somewhat futuristic dystopian city with tangible and realistic geometry. Faith will parkour her way across the rooftops of buildings, navigate through facilities, and weave in and out of active train tracks. And it's worth noting that the transitions between the multitude of locations, whether on the low ground or the high ground, all feel connected and on brand. It's easy to assume that due to the cover art and early levels that the identity of the runners is purely bred on the rooftops, but the use of verticality with each change in chapter keeps each run feeling fresh. But it's not just the choice in setting that achieves this. Mirror's Edge has a timeless beauty and art style. I'm almost offended at how stunning and iconic of a visual was conceived during such an era of gaming where most titles came out looking the same as one another. I would not be surprised if my obsession over futuristic aesthetics was spawned from this game alone. And it's crazy to think most of the heavy lifting is actually just being done by a unique choice of colour and a reserved application of detail. The clean white aesthetic combined with smooth surfaces void of too much texturing is an easy sell on the eyeballs, unless you're playing in a pitch black room, in which case good luck with your retinas. This white colour is at the centre stage even when the game's tone shifts via its use of lighting. And it can seem as such a nothing statement to point out a game's use of lighting, but Mirror's Edge uses it to advance the visuals while keeping the iconic white throughout. You'll see the frequent splashes of orange, a shift to blue on scaffolding, my personal favourite of the bunch, a nighttime green tint on a ship, and the obvious use of that nocturnal lighting in the final chapter to contrast with how the game opens with that white colour scheme on full blast. With just a few splashes of paint and some changes in the lighting, Mirror's Edge makes multiple iconic and memorable visuals even without considering the evolution in platform design that it's accompanied by, as to which we must address. The movement would simply not be special without the variety of obstacles presented. This comes with the difference in settings, of course. Rooftops, warehouses, train stations, ships, drains, skyscrapers. Each location has intricate and enjoyable pathing with multiple options for the sake of challenge, all whilst looking stunning in the process. Mirror's Edge Catalyst, however, is vastly different in its approach. I'm aware that fans of the original have some stern criticisms in regards to Catalyst, as do I, but I'll be honest, I think a solid amount of the hate is a little overstated. While the OG is beautifully unique in its own way, Catalyst is also absolutely gorgeous. The reboot opts for an almost cyberpunk city of glass. The prominent white makes a return, and even the separate areas of the open world adopt different splashes of colour, much like the original. The tangibility is, however, borderline absent, but the wonder is accentuated with glossy pristine surfaces forming most of the playground. To speak on said artistic change to a less realistic looking world, even someone as biased as myself, who will buy into any dystopian future aesthetic, I can see where the game falls short in its environment. Despite also taking place mostly up on the rooftops similar to the first game, the actual feeling of being way above ground can often get lost in the choices of terrain. During the rooftop sequences of the original, many of the vaultable obstacles consist of things that you would expect to see on a rooftop, such as solar panels, air vents, generators, railings, and they also do look like something from the modern day. So even though it looked to have a futuristic and memorable art style, it still felt like a tangible world to run through. Catalyst, on the other hand, fails to capture this realism. This is a problem, even though some areas of the map, like the pink area, I don't know what it's called, back there, dude, that's probably the best looking in terms of actually feeling like a city, because you're going across balconies and scaffolding along the edge, you're jumping between big gaps across buildings. I understand that these are billboards across buildings, but it really does just look like an excuse. Like, just look at this frame right here, yeah? It doesn't give the idea that you're on rooftops and in a tangible world like the first game does. Not because it's futuristic. Cyberpunk can pull off the flying cars and all this shit. Like, look at this. It just looks like a video game arcade level, you know? There's too much shit going on. There's too many blocks and lines, and it looks like this looks like a 3D Geometry Dash level, is what I'm saying. And this, even though this is a billboard, there's another one here. Like, this doesn't make sense. There's a vent here, much like the first game, or like an air generator. I don't know what the fuck these are. Things that you see on roofs, yeah. So they kind of brought that back, except there's this random bridge here, which doesn't really make sense. If we're talking making a city, like the way you'd make a city, these would never exist. This billboard is way too high. Like, that's for traffic. Traffic's not going to see it. So it is just an excuse to put here as a double wall run spot. There's steps, there's a ladder, there's too much. Like, what is this, bro? You get me? I get it looks futuristic, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it looks bad, it looks beautiful. This is my aesthetic, but it just puts into perspective what the first game did well, which was making a very believable city that looks and feels like it could exist. You can make a futuristic setting that feels like it could be real. This one feels a bit too video gamey in some areas. But despite these criticisms, It's very easy to get addicted to the stunning graphics and look past this break of immersion because many of the designated races, deliveries and primary missions have such entertaining designs that I can't help but repeatedly try them for better scores anyway. A great example of captivating level design from Catalyst would be the final mission of scaling the Shard. Outside of the pole climbing segments, which aren't my favourite, the sheer scale and height is put on full display, with Faith having to launch herself up the skyscraper with the propellers of the fans of the building. Or she has to grapple her way past shattering glass floors. As someone with a fear of heights, I was absolutely shitting myself playing this segment. Oh dude, it's so high up, I hate it, I hate it. Oh, dude, it's actually making my stomach flip. I fucking hate heights so much.
No, I'm not. Have you found any?
Faith, you're a fucking crazy person, you know that? Oh my god. This is how you design a level for a finale, and dare I say it's one of the elements done much better than the original. However, despite all my enthusiasm and glazing towards what this franchise does so well, it's only fair that I also speak on what prevents Mirror's Edge from achieving the title of a masterpiece.
My mom worked on Reflection and now my sister works for Kruger.
The employees are embracing Reflection as if it were a
Nobody
long
gives a
lost
fuck.
I'm not broken.
This shit's so ass, bruh. Oh, story ruining everything. Let me just praise.
It's possible to access his private network from there.
Possible to access his private network from there. Wow, more grid points. According to my calculations. And my name's Plastic. Oh. Go get this chip. Go infiltrate this facility.
Stop it! I hate you!
Wow, epic music in
Stop it, Kat! My
Sister
name
rivalry
is
that
Isabel!
definitely has emotional weight and isn't just corny and fucking poorly written and shit. Bro, it's so I should have left the music off. It was better without it. You two suck, bro. Like,
It was the only way! But for the sake of Reflection!
this music doesn't work. It doesn't work, bro. Straight up, I'm not going to pull my punches about the issues with both games. This video is predominantly about why these games are so good, so as long as you are fully convinced by now that I'm not here to just hate, I'm sure it's safe for me to express my negative opinions. Both stories are awful. I've tried desperately to consider the opinions of others by listening to excellent reviews on the game, in which there are so many good things stated in regards to the story of the first, but I don't think there's any convincing me. Mirror's Edge story suffers from a lack of time spent with each character. The campaign is very brief, so any attempt at making the cast interesting, let alone the story, is almost impossible. Faith's sister is set up for a murder she didn't commit. Sure, a heavy opening plot point, but even saving her by the end warrants no emotions or fucks to give. You are betrayed multiple times by runners who you spend little to no time with, so they never really feel like allies in the first place. With all that being said, the reboot did such a bad job that it made the original story seem better in retrospect. In contrast to Catalyst, the Mirror's Edge campaign runtime and story does not overstay its welcome at least, thus making the pacing its best quality. These are both movement-focused experiences, so admittedly, any other elements should be secondary, and that they certainly are. But while the OG story is serviceable in world building it provides, Catalyst shits the bed. Part of the story falling short actually has to do with how well the open world works. The most enjoyable element of the game is the traversal of each area of the Glass City whilst tackling side quests, races and deliveries in record time. So while you can freely focus on said activities, any time you spend going back to the main story missions in order to experience new levels feels like an absolute drain. The story drags on. Boring cliche writing and characters who were expected to care about, rushed character development with predictable twists, and just a dull, uninteresting plot that's accompanied by failed attempts at evoking emotions. Like I said, Stories can be secondary in these games, and that's why despite all these issues, both titles are still excellent and worth playing. But my god, Catalyst is almost cringe with some of its cutscenes.
I heard some runner got out of juvie today.
I heard she's eager to run.
She's been gone a long time.
I also heard she's sorry.
It's especially a shame due to the worlds built in either game seem interesting on the surface, but man, those worlds are just not capitalized on the way they could have been. Anyway, I'm done having a tantrum about the narratives. It's now time for me to complain about the combat. Unfortunately, I'm almost certain that both the melee and gunplay were forced into the original by higher ups in fear of a movement only game not selling well, and this system would detract from what the movement achieved. An awkwardly restrictive and frustrating lock-on mechanic when meleeing, horrendous timing on a disarm feature accompanied by a slow motion ability that cannot be toggled, and sluggish thrown-in gunplay to kill all momentum and exhilaration provided by the parkour. Combine that with highly accurate enemies with decent damage output, and multiple levels become an absolute slog to get through. Catalyst, although making some massive improvements to the combat, still winds up having its worst and most frustrating moments courtesy of the interference these sequences bring. You can quick chain attacks to instantly dispatch NPCs while on the move, which is an excellent addition, and the lock-on is actually escapable if the newly added dodge doesn't already suffice. Luckily the gunplay is completely removed, and combos and animations are also oozing with flavour. But, once again, these fights become annoying very early on. And side note, another touch on movement, because it's a criticism here. In Catalyst, they add the ability to pull down walls with your grappling hook. This requires you to stand still and completely kills the flow of your parkour. Just a silly addition. I have no doubt plenty of players enjoy the combat in either title, but for me, it just never landed outside of the occasional engagement during Catalyst. Just really sucks to see. Mirror's Edge is not a perfect series of games, but it is however one of a kind, or two of a kind. You should play both. High effort with unique visuals with a strong focus on a singular mechanic to provide an iconic experience that will age well for years to come. If you have not played either of them, I highly advise you to at least try the original, as it's bound to leave its mark. And that all being said, if you have enjoyed today's video, please feel free to drop a like and sub. At the moment of uploading this video, we are still en route to 1,000 subscribers on this channel, so if you can help me reach that goal for now, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you all so much for watching and all the support on the recent videos, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Take care.
We lost every